Warren Buffett, one of the world's most famous investors, had built a reputation over decades as the Oracle of Omaha. His fortune, valued in the billions, and his shrewd investments made him an icon of financial success. But in the summer of 2014, Buffett decided to conduct an experiment, one that would test how people treated him when they had no idea who he really was. Instead of the billionaire Warren Buffett, he wanted to be just a regular, unnoticed person. He wanted to know if people valued him for his wealth and success or for the person he truly was. That day, Buffett left his house dressed in a worn, old shirt, faded pants, and a pair of simple sneakers. He looked nothing like the man people saw in the news, the one with a suit and tie at high-profile meetings. No one would have recognized him in this outfit. He didn't carry a phone, nor did he have any assistants or anyone to help him through the day. Just a regular man, with nothing to give except his time and his thoughts. The experiment would reveal a lot, not only about how people treated him, but also about human nature itself. Buffett headed to a nearby cafe, one of his favorite spots in Omaha. The cafe was quiet, and the early morning hours meant only a few customers were inside. The barista greeted him politely and asked for his order. "Just a coffee," Buffett replied. The barista took his order without a second glance, unaware that this seemingly average man was one of the wealthiest people in the world. It was exactly what Buffett had hoped for, an interaction based purely on what he looked like, not who he was. As Buffett sat down and began sipping his coffee, he observed the other customers in the cafe. People were going about their business, engrossed in conversations or buried in their phones. No one seemed to notice him, and more importantly, no one cared who he was. As he sat there, he thought about how different it was from the attention he usually received. People weren't impressed by his wealth here. In fact, they weren't paying attention to him at all. A few tables away, a group of young men was discussing investing strategies. One of them, in an animated tone, spoke to his friends. "If you want to make real money, you've got to think like Warren Buffett. The guy knows how to pick the right stocks," he said as the others nodded in agreement. Warren chuckled quietly to himself, wondering if these young men would recognize him if they knew who he was. He had spent decades building his fortune, but to these guys, he was just a name, a symbol of wealth. They had no idea that the very person they were talking about was sitting right there in the same room, in plain sight. As the conversation continued, Buffett couldn't help but reflect on how people were so fixated on wealth and success. They had no idea about the life he lived, the challenges he faced, or the work that went into building his empire. All they saw was the surface, the wealth, and the success that came with it. But what if he wasn't wealthy? What if he were just an average man sitting at that table with no reputation, no fortune to back him up? After finishing his coffee, Buffett decided to leave the cafe. As he stepped out into the bright sunlight, he felt like a stranger in his own city. No one seemed to recognize him, and that was exactly what he had hoped for. The rest of the day was a series of similar encounters. Buffett spent time walking around, stopping in different shops and restaurants, just another face in the crowd. It was clear that, to the people he encountered, he was just another man, not someone to be treated with awe or admiration. But as he continued to move through the city, he began to question something deeper. Was this really how people viewed him? Was his wealth and status the only things that mattered? Was that all people saw when they looked at him? And if they didn't know who he was, did they still treat him with the same respect? These questions lingered in his mind as he moved through the day.